Have you ever looked at the man sleeping beside you and realized you don't know him at all? Not after 38 years. Not after raising 3 children together. Not after everything. I have. And I wish I could tell you it happened all at once like a bolt of lightning. It would have been easier that way. Instead, it came the way a slow leak does. Quietly, almost politely, until one day the ceiling caves in and you're standing in the rubble wondering how long the water had been running. My name is June. I'm 64 years old. I live in Oakville, Ontario, in the same house my husband Lawrence and I bought when we were both 31 and foolish enough to think we knew what forever meant. The house has a wraparound porch that I repainted myself 2 summers ago. Sage green, the color I chose, not the beige Lawrence always insisted on. That matters now. The small things matter in ways I didn't expect. I want to tell you what happened, not for pity. I don't want pity. I want to tell you because somewhere out there, there's a woman who is feeling a small wrong thing she can't name yet. And maybe if she hears my story, she'll trust that feeling before it gets as far as it got with me. Lawrence Alderman was a good-looking man when I married him. Broad shoulders, easy smile, the kind of quiet confidence that people mistake for wisdom. He was a civil engineer. We met through mutual friends at a summer barbecue in Burlington. July 1987. He showed up late, apologized sincerely to the host, and then spent 40 minutes asking me questions about myself. Just questions. I remember thinking, this one listens, that was it. That was all it took. We married 18 months later. Our first years were ordinary in the best possible way. We had our son Timothy in 1990. Our daughter Rosalind in 1993. We drove to Cape Breton one summer with both kids in the back seat, and we argued about the map, and we laughed about it later. We had a good life. I genuinely believe that. I'm not revising history to make myself feel better. I'm saying that whatever came after, there were real years that were real. I worked as a dental hygienist until Rosalind was born, and then Lawrence and I made the decision together, or what I understood to be together, that I would stay home. He was making good money by then. We didn't need 2 incomes, and I wanted to be there for the children. I don't regret that part. What I regret is that I let the decision make me smaller without noticing. By the time the kids were in high school, I had lost the habit of my own financial independence so completely that I didn't even see it as a loss. Lawrence handled everything. The mortgage, the investments, the taxes, the saving. I handled the house, the children, the appointments, the meals, the birthdays, the Christmas cards, the thank you notes, the school council, the aging parents on both sides. We had what I would have called a partnership. I know now that it was not a partnership. It was a division of labor designed so that one person held all the keys. When I needed money for groceries, for the kids, for anything at all, I asked Lawrence. He always gave it. He never refused, not once. But there was always a process to it, a small accounting. What's this for? How much do you need? Did you check if we had one already? Small questions, always reasonable sounding, never cruel, just a process. And I was so inside that process for so long that I couldn't see it for what it was. My daughter, Rosalind, told me once, years later, after everything, that she had watched it as a child and not known how to name it either. She said she just knew she would never let a man be the only one who knew the PIN number. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did both. The first thing I noticed was in March, about 2 years ago now. I came across a statement, paper, left on Lawrence's desk, which was unusual because he was meticulous about papers. He always shredded. Always. But this one had slipped behind a stack of books, and I only found it because I was dusting, which he always said I didn't need to do in there, and now I understand why. It was from a bank I didn't recognize. Not our bank. Not the joint account. Not the savings account I was aware of. A different institution entirely. The statement showed a balance I could not make sense of. $260,000. I stood in that room for a long time. I want to tell you that I immediately knew what it meant, but I didn't. My first thought, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, was that he had been saving up as a surprise. For a trip, maybe. For retirement. I put the paper back where I found it and I didn't say anything. And I watched him at dinner that night and he was the same man he always was. He asked me how my day was. He ate what I cooked. He fell asleep on the couch watching the news. I told myself I had misread the number. I didn't go back into his office for 2 weeks. And then one evening when he was at a council meeting for the local engineering association, he was on the board, had been for years, very respected. I went back in. I told myself I was just looking for a pen. I wasn't looking for a pen. The statement was gone. But I had remembered the name of the institution. I wrote it on a piece of paper I kept in my cardigan pocket, and I carried it around for 3 days before I did anything with it. When I finally searched the name online, it came back as a private wealth management firm. Not a regular bank. The kind of place where you don't walk in off the street. The kind of place that doesn't advertise. I had never heard Lawrence mention it. In 38 years of marriage, this name had never come up once. I didn't confront him. I don't fully know why. Another message arrived. Maybe because I had spent 38 years smoothing things over, keeping the peace, making dinner, and some part of me was still trying to find an explanation that would let me keep doing exactly that. Or maybe, and I think this is actually closer to the truth, some part of me already knew and was not ready to know. I started paying more attention. Quietly, the way you do when you're afraid of what you'll find. I noticed that Lawrence received mail at a post office box I'd had no idea existed. I found this out because I was behind him in line at the post office one Saturday morning. He hadn't seen me come in, and I watched him open a small brass box in the back row and take out 2 envelopes. He tucked them into his coat. I pretended to be looking at the display of bubble mailers near the front. He walked right past me on his way out, said, "Oh, there you are," and told me he'd come to pick up a package for work. There were no packages. His hands were empty except for those 2 envelopes now folded into his inside pocket. I nodded. I said something ordinary. We drove home together, and he put those envelopes somewhere I never found. And we had lunch, and I thought about them for the rest of the day. After that, I began to keep a small notebook. Nothing dramatic. A plain spiral notebook from the pharmacy. The kind kids use for homework. I wrote down dates, times, things that didn't line up. The post office box, the bank statement. The evening phone calls he took in the garage and explained as work. The weekend in May when he said he was at a conference in Hamilton, and I drove by the hotel he named, and the parking lot was empty, the whole building dark. That last one. I sat in my car in that empty parking lot in the rain, and something inside me that had been hoping very hard finally stopped hoping. I drove home. I made supper. I did not say one word. I want you to understand something about that silence. People will wonder. I know because my own daughter wondered, eventually, why I didn't just ask him. Why I didn't confront him, throw the notebook across the table, demand answers. And I understand why that seems obvious from the outside. But when you have spent 38 years keeping the temperature of a house, you have been trained. You have trained yourself to absorb rather than explode, to manage rather than disrupt. It took me a long time to understand that this was not a character strength. It was a survival skill I had developed so slowly that it felt like my own personality. The other thing is this. I had no money of my own. Not truly. The joint account existed, yes, but Lawrence reviewed it. He knew every transaction. The credit card was in both our names, and he got the statements. I had no savings in my own name, no investments, nothing. If I confronted him, and he decided to be difficult, and I had no idea then what this man was actually capable of, I had no ground to stand on, legally or practically. I needed to understand what I was dealing with before I gave him any warning that I was dealing with it at all. So I called my friend Beverly. Not my Beverly. That's a name I know from somewhere else. I mean my real friend, the one I've known since we were both on the school council in 2001. Her name is Sandra Fitch. Sandra had gone through her own divorce 10 years earlier, not an easy one, and she had a lawyer she trusted completely. She didn't ask me many questions. She just said, "Call Louise Dreyfus. Tell her I sent you. Don't say anything at home first." I called Louise Dreyfus the next morning from the parking lot of a Tim Hortons, 3 blocks from my house, with my engine running and the heat on. She answered on the second ring. That call changed everything. Louise Dreyfus was a family law lawyer in Mississauga, small office above a physiotherapy clinic, and the most practical person I had ever spoken to in my life. She did not treat me like a confused older woman who might be making things up. She listened, she asked precise questions, and then she said, "You need a financial investigator before you need anything else." What you've described is not normal. A post office box, a private wealth firm, cash. This suggests deliberate concealment of assets. That matters enormously in the division of property. She gave me a name. A man named Peter Callahan, Financial Forensics. I met him at his office in Burlington 2 weeks later, and I brought my little spiral notebook, and he took it more seriously than I expected. Over the following 6 weeks, what Peter Callahan uncovered made my knees go weak. Lawrence Alderman. My husband, the man I had shared a bed with for 38 years. The man who asked me what groceries cost had been maintaining a second financial life for at least 11 years. A private investment portfolio worth nearly $400,000. A condo unit in Hamilton, purchased in 2016, registered in the name of a numbered company. Monthly transfers to an account I had no knowledge of. And a woman named Diane Kowalczyk, whose name appeared on a joint account at the private firm, and whose address was the Hamilton condo. I sat with that for a long time after Peter told me. I had brought a coffee and I held it until it was completely cold, and then I put it down and I said, "How long?" Peter said records suggested at least 6 years. 6 years. Our youngest grandchild, Rosalind's daughter, was 6 years old. Lawrence had held that baby in the hospital the day she was born, and I remembered his face. I had taken a photo of it. It was framed on my bookshelf, and all of that had been real, his love for that child. And still, he had been living another life and coming home and asking me what I needed at the grocery store. I did not cry in Peter Callahan's office. I saved that for the car. What I did next surprised even me. I did not confront Lawrence, not yet. I went home and I made dinner and I watched him eat. And I thought about Diane Kowalczyk and I tried to imagine her, what she looked like, whether she knew about me, whether she had been to the Hamilton condo and looked out the window and thought it was hers. I felt angry at her, and then I felt something I didn't expect, which was a strange gray sorrow for her. Because if she had been with Lawrence for 6 years, she was being managed too. She just didn't know it yet. Louise told me the next step. We needed to ensure that Lawrence could not move or hide additional assets once he knew I was aware. That meant timing. We had to file at exactly the right moment, and before that moment, I needed to know everything we were working with. That took 3 more weeks, and then Louise called me and said, "We're ready." She couriered the separation documents to me. I received them at Sandra Fitch's house, because I did not want them coming to my address. I drove home with them in a yellow envelope on the passenger seat, and I thought about where to put them. Lawrence kept a small fireproof safe in his office closet. I had known about it for years. He'd bought it when Timothy was a teenager, said it was for the house documents, the passports, the wills. He had never given me the combination. I had never asked for it, which I now understood to be one of the clearest pictures of our marriage I could have described. A safe in our shared home, our shared documents inside it. And I had no access. But Lawrence was a man of habit. He had used the same PIN for his phone for 11 years. Our wedding anniversary. And I had once, years ago, come into the office while he was opening the safe, and I had watched his hand without meaning to. The anniversary numbers, same as everything else. The evening before Louise filed the documents with the court, I went into Lawrence's office. I put the yellow envelope inside his safe, behind the passports, behind the old house insurance records, behind the life of ours that he thought he was the only one who understood. Then I closed it. I entered the combination again to make sure it locked. I turned off the office light. I made a cup of tea and sat in the kitchen and listened to the house. He found them 4 days later. I know because I was upstairs when I heard the safe, heard the silence that followed, and then heard him walk very slowly to the bottom of the stairs. "June," he said. There was something in his voice I had never heard before, something stripped back, all that quiet confidence gone. "I know," I said, "from the top of the stairs. I didn't go down." And then I said the other thing I had prepared, the thing Louise and I had discussed, calm and factual. "My lawyer has already filed. The accounts are frozen. I suggest you call someone." That was all. What followed was not quick and it was not painless. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think some people expect a moment of triumph to feel clean, and it doesn't. Divorce at 64 is its own particular grief. You are grieving, not just the marriage but the version of yourself that lived inside it, the future you thought you had, The retirement you had imagined together. You are explaining things to your children that no mother ever wants to explain. You are answering questions from your son, Timothy, who was devastated, who kept saying, "I don't understand. Dad wouldn't." And then running out of sentence because of course there it was, Dad had. Roslyn was different. Roslyn had always been the one who watched more carefully. She cried hard the first night, but by the next morning she was sitting at my kitchen table making a list. "Okay," she said. "Here is what we're going to do. That girl. I don't know what I would have done without her." The financial disclosure process took months. Lawrence hired a lawyer who was, frankly, not as good as Louise, and every procedural delay his side tried to introduce only lengthened the time I had to quietly prepare. By the end of it, the division of assets included the private portfolio, the Hamilton condo, 38 years of pension entitlement, and the house, which I chose to keep. I chose to keep the house. Not out of spite. Or not only that, because it's mine. The porch is sage green. The kitchen has the window I always wanted, the one Lawrence said wasn't worth the cost of the renovation. And that I had done anyway. While he was on a supposed work trip, the summer before all of this began. Some part of me was already starting to reclaim small things. I just didn't know it yet. As for Diane Kowalczyk, I never contacted her. It wasn't my place, and it wasn't my story to tell. I understand she learned what she needed to learn in her own time. Whatever Lawrence told her about his life, she had her own reckoning with. I hope she found solid ground. I genuinely mean that. I want to say one more thing. For anyone who is sitting with a small wrong feeling they cannot name, trust it. Not because every uneasy moment in a marriage is a sign of betrayal. It isn't. Sometimes it's just life being complicated, people being tired, communication breaking down in ordinary ways. But if there is something, a name, a number, an account, a habit of silence in a specific room, and something in you is pulling at that thread, pay attention to it. Because the only thing harder than finding out the truth is spending another year pretending you didn't already feel it. I know my own worth now in a way I didn't at 31, or 45, or even 60. That is a terrible way to learn something, and I would not wish it on anyone. But I will tell you this honestly. I wake up in the morning in my own house, with my sage green porch and my kitchen window, and I know exactly what is in my bank account, and I answer to no one about what I spend, and some days, not all days, but some, that is enough to feel like something close to peace.